Hey, well, thanks for joining us as we take the time to sit around with some friends and enjoy a couple glasses of wine. Cheers, guys.
To Casino Mine Ranch.
All right. Today we are at Casino Mine Ranch and we are enjoying some of their different varietals, and we have the expert here to tell us a little bit about what we're drinking.
Hey guys, I'm Matt Zaldivar and tasting manager here at Casino Mine Ranch. Looks like you guys are probably drinking Grenache Blanc.
Yes.
And me and Justin are enjoying the Mourvedre.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, everything is estate grown. Casino Mine Ranch was founded back in 1936 by the owners of this winery's great aunt. Her name was Simone Shaw. She bought the property to mine for gold. And since it was a gamble, she named the place Casino Mine. They mined for gold from 36 up until the mid 1940s. World War II put a halt on it, and mining for gold was considered non-essential. So a lot of those men went to war, and gold was not allowed in California after that point. So Simone planted walnut orchards, raised chickens and sheep, and so became Casino Mine Ranch after World War II, or at the start of World War II. The owners of this winery, their great aunt, they grew up going to see her on the weekends, and as boys, they would have fun, adventuring through the ranch and the gold mines and whatnot. So to pay homage to Simone and to the story, we tell it through the wines. So that's kind of the little story on Casino Mine.
That's awesome. And just in case you didn't catch it, Rachel, could you introduce Matt again?
Oh, so Matt is the assistant manager here at
Casino Mine Ranch. That's awesome. And joining us also is Justin Falco. And Justin, you're a local real estate agent. I would say celebrity, but real estate agent. You've been working in the El Dorado Hills area for quite some time. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. So we're going to jump right into it. As you know, the reason we do this podcast is we really believe in the value of real estate, and that underneath everything lies the land. And so we like to talk about small business owners and also real estate and how those two intersect. And so that's why we have our guest with us today.
And really, it's a spirit of entrepreneurship, right? So you run a small business, you operate a small business, and so, local business owner.
It's considered a small business.
I mean, when you look around, this place is fabulous, and it's very large and in charge. But at the end of the day, this is a family business that it's not like you're running into these chains like Walmart or Target. And so this is really just a service to the community. And so talking about how we are all in service to the community and what that means and how we empower ourselves to make change.
I think that's one of the things that gets confused when you're talking about small business is sometimes people think about small business as just being somebody that's just starting out, or they don't have any resources, or they don't have any money. And obviously, if you look around a winery of this class costs millions to develop. And so it's not small in the sense of revenue or the investment made, but it's small in the sense that it's not a corporate investment, that it's a family-ran enterprise. Even if that family is has the resources to do it, it's still, they go through the same thing that any small business owner does. You've got to get exposure. You've got to get the community to know you're here. You've got to get people to come out. We're a little bit of a distance away from Sacramento. Not too bad, but a little bit of a drive. People just don't naturally run across it. And so I think they still face even a well-off small business still faces a lot of challenges. They're just different challenges.
And I think that with an elite, I'd say this is an elite winery.
Absolutely.
It all connects back to Simone from 1936, who took that leap of faith and said, and wow, what a legacy she created. These many generations behind, and now her family is reaping the benefits, which so I'm going to tie that into the whole real estate is, if you have an opportunity, you jump in the game, because that is the legacy and the future of your family.
Entrepreneurship probably wasn't even really a widely used word back then. However, it is definitely what Simone was. She was an entrepreneur.
Yeah, she was. And how neat, in 1936, the challenges as a woman in business and what she must have faced.
Oh, definitely.
Can you touch base, or do you know anything
Well, it was interesting you're talking about elite winery and whatnot. A little backstory on Simone. So she was born in Belgium in 1904. Her and her father fled Belgium during World War I, and her father was the chief mining engineer in Belgium. He purchased a Julian mine in Alaska and brought teenage Simone at that point to Alaska to mine for gold. So she would
Wow.
help with the gold mining. She would they lived in a cabin and cooked for all the miners. She shot a grizzly bear up there. If you ever get lucky enough to come to the estate, you could see the paw.
Okay.
We have it in one of the tasting rooms over at the estate location. She moved back to New York after they were mining for gold, and she married Samuel Shaw. And Samuel's family was a Shaw family. And they were the largest collectors of art before the Gettys were in the U.S. And they owned the Grand Central Hotel next to Grand Central Station in New York City. Wow. So they were in the same social circles as the Rockefellers. And so she goes from being Annie Oakley in Alaska to becoming, think of like 1920s, roaring 20s,
Yeah.
Great Gatsby era, socialite.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So she really was kind of a bit of both. So this is a nice place. We want it to be also an area that's really welcoming too.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of embodies who Simone is.
Yeah.
Man, that
That's
is awesome.
amazing.
I love that backstory. Justin, I know you've got a little bit of a backstory as well. You might not go back hundreds of years, but tell us, what was your influence on getting in? What was your family's legacy? I think that is kind of a topic of what we're talking about today is legacy. What was your family's legacy on getting you into real estate?
So I actually grew up in Amador, so back home right now, and my dad was a general contractor for about 17 years, and he was flipping homes, and I was growing up in that, so we were moving every 2 years, and always a new house and project and all that, so that was fun. And then he ended up getting back into corrections, and I was just a valet attendant at Red Hawk trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and decided to get licensed, and it was about 8 years ago. So
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
you said 2 years. You know why? I'm going to guess that you probably know why your dad chose to move every 2 years. But
right,
Yeah.
the tax incentives.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Not
Right?
everybody knows that.
yeah,
Can you
so
explain
Yeah.
it to us real quick?
If it's been your primary residence for 2 years, you can avoid capital gains tax, and when you're married, it's $500,000,
Yeah.
which is a substantial chunk of change when you buy a fixer-upper, put some money into it.
Yeah. So what would you tell a first-time home buyer who's struggling and they're like, oh, I can't quite afford the house that I want, but I'm interested in purchasing? Like, what would you tell that first home buyer?
Yeah, no, so I think a lot of it comes down to, it's your first home, right? So everyone's got this instant gratification. They want the $500,000, $700,000 gorgeous house that's got everything they want. But sometimes, as a first-time home buyer, it's what's affordable, especially right now with the higher rates and all of that. And just getting your foot in the door of home ownership is huge, right?
Yeah.
You're building generational wealth, and
Absolutely. And one of the things that I tell my clients is get in the game and you start and you be in that house for 2 years and then you build that equity and then you flip that over into building up.
use that money to get the dream house, or even
Absolutely.
the bigger house, to upsize, whatever it is.
And it sounds
grow
to
your
me
family, whatever.
like your dad actually set that foundation of entrepreneurship and created his wealth through real estate.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
It is
and
awesome.
and I feel like
Yeah.
I wish I followed a little bit more of what he could do, because I'm not as handy, right? He was able to just do everything. He built a house from the ground up once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I still have to call him for all my house projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that we all come with different gifts. I'm the same way. I share the gift of talking.
Yeah.
I can talk and I can talk and I can talk. But as far as building things, I'll always have to do it 3 or 4 times.
And I can delegate.
There you go.
And
So,
I'm going to guess that your dad is very proud and is inspired that you are doing the work that he's doing. And I think that, and especially like a lot of labor and, intensive jobs that's a lot of hard work that us as parents, we want our children to have opportunities. And so he's probably very proud to see what you're doing and knowing that his gifts added to that.
and actually, just because I understand your numbers, the numbers behind you, not every real estate agent actually sells houses. I know that might come as a shock to a lot of people. But if you look at the number of houses that are sold every year in California, and then you look at the number of licenses that are in California, you will quickly be able to discern that not every real estate agent actually sells houses. So I like the fact that you are actually selling houses. And so not only would your dad be proud that you got into real estate, but he'd be proud that you're actually one of those agents that sells houses, not just has a license.
Right.
So I really appreciate that. And, as I heard you talking about building on what your dad built and how he would build and that would go towards the next house and that kind of thing, as I heard you talk about that earlier, I am thinking about this project here. This place did not start out like this. I mean, we're sitting in probably one of the nicest tasting rooms I've been in, and I've
Yeah.
been to Napa Valley.
Absolutely.
I've enjoyed some wine in great places, and so this is a beautiful location. How did this first start out? What was their vision? How many acres is this place? Tell us a little bit about the land brand and how it developed over time into what it is today.
Yeah, so we touched a little bit about Simone, and her great nephews are the ones that own this winery. They grew up going to the estate location, which is just about 5 minutes up the road, to kind of tell a story of Simone. They wanted to tell a story through the wines. So Simone passed away in 1999, and she, the owner's parents inherited the property, and they really weren't interested in maintaining it or keeping it. So one of the brothers purchased the property, and that was his adventure. Almost every weekend coming out here. So he wanted to hold that for his son too, to kind of Bay Area located. So they wanted to have a space to for people to be wild and free. I guess.
Yeah.
So one of the brothers wanted to plant the grapes, and the other brother wanted nothing to do with it. And then probably 5 years later, the other brother said, "Okay, I'm in."
Yeah.
So we have the Casino Mine Ranch estate location is 60 acres. It's closer to where Soban is, if you're familiar with that, just up the road. And there's 14 acres of vine there. We just planted another 9.
Nice.
That'll be a dry farm vineyard, and we currently produce 7 different varietals at the estate location. This tasting room site is 20 acres, and there's 4 acres of vine here. We just grafted on Syrah, which is between the home and the tasting room. And then in the front, on the other side of this pond, we have a small acreage of Carignan, Aglianico, and Neradavola.
Dry farm vineyard, that's a new term for me. What does that mean?
You pretty much don't have irrigation on the vineyard. So
wow.
Initially you have to water, obviously, the grapes because they need somewhere to start.
Yeah.
But there's no irrigation lines. If you go up and down, most of the areas up at the vineyards here, you're going to see some drip lines along the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But areas where there's either no groundwater or there's no means to access a well,
yeah,
you would dry farm.
Okay.
And a lot of historic Zinfandel vineyards in this area are dry farmed because think of when they were planted, there was no irrigation
absolutely
during that time.
Yeah.
We decided to plant 9 acres and do dry farming on that side. So initially you have to water it, and then eventually it finds the groundwater, and we got a lot of rain, as you know, this past year.
Yes.
So we're hoping it doesn't have to, the roots don't have to go so deep in to find it.
Yeah.
So the vines were planted back in 2012, and our first vintage was in 2015. This tasting room was not built at that time. We opened this up in March of 2023. So we were using the owner's home as a tasting room.
Oh, wow.
In fact, the design of the tasting room, the layout is very similar to the home. Front door, that big bar that was their kitchen. So we used their home on the weekends as a tasting room.
Love that.
And it was really special, very exclusive. You had to make reservations. It's on the same road here, but we're right in the middle of the Shenandoah Valley here. But if you didn't know about it, you just kind of had to know. It was kind of like, I don't want to say a secret, but it was really like a hidden gem.
Yeah, it's like the Szechuan menu.
Yep, you just have to know it's there. So just out of curiosity, before we move on to the next question, how does that dry farming affect the vine? So does it make it's got to come through the fruit into the wine you're making. What does that do to it?
Well, I think I might be a little cheesy here, but it'd be kind of funny to just make a comparison. People go through challenges, and I think being uncomfortable, struggling, sometimes is good.
Exactly right.
It builds character.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens when you have vines that have a hard time. Obviously, you want to have a yield every year, but what dry farming does is it relies on the water in the ground. So depending on how much rain you get every year, you're not going to get a consistent amount of water as you would when you irrigate. When you have those drip lines, because you're going to get consistent year-round water to those vines. Whereas when you dry farm, each vintage will probably change, and it'll be reflective of what happened that year. Was there a lot of water, or was there a drought? So that's the difference between dry farming and you get more characteristics, you get more complexity.
More extremes on either side of it.
Yeah.
Kind of like the year 2015 was a good vintage.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just affects that
Yeah.
because of the weather is going to have more of a pronounced. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. So what a connection into, the character that comes out of hardships and challenges. Like life is hard, right?
It is. I don't know if you know it or not, but life is hard.
It really is. And when you're put through those challenges, there's so much growth and so much development that comes through that. And through that are those silver linings, right?
Yeah.
There are those just pieces that you can cannot come up with unless you've gone through the struggle.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, like, can you share with us just some challenges that you've faced?
When I got licensed, it was just, I had no database. I had never done something like it. I was a valet attendant, right?
Right.
And I knew it was something I wanted to do, so I couldn't just, dip my toes. I dropped to part-time for like 3 months, and I was like, okay, I can't do this. I need to commit. So I quit.
Boy, that's a great
jumped
word.
into real
Commit.
Yeah.
So I stopped being part-time because I would drop from full-time, but I was like, even just those 3 days a week, I was like, I need to be available. I need to do real estate every day. You wouldn't go to any other profession, and if they have a side job or their main job's not what you need help with, right?
I'm your dentist by day, I'm your valet by night.
Yeah, right. So, you want a professional that this is their career, right? They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They have,
Was that
support.
scary?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you think about that challenge and that fear, right, of leaping into the unknown, but knowing in your heart of hearts, like that was what you were called to do.
Yeah.
What did that feel like, and how did you pave through that?
It was, almost you have to do it because you just quit your job. But in a sense of, I'm building a relationship business, so just focused on my friends, my family, talking to people like normal, and just at the gym, wherever I meet people, I just kept doing that. But now it's real estate comes up more often.
Yeah.
Not, just naturally.
I have to do it. That's what's missing in a lot of agents' vocabulary, is I have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Once you make the mindset that you have to do it, then it changes everything.
Yep. It's a job.
So for me, like, taking that leap into real estate, it's funny, I find myself in these conversations, which I think organically happened probably before I entered a career of real estate, but I'm like at the dentist, and I have my hygienist behind me, and I'm like, so do you rent or own? And she's like, what? And I'm like, do you rent or own? She's like, oh, I rent. And I'm like, you're paying 100% interest into
just becomes a part of you.
But
before it was like the PMI was the issue, and it's like, well, rent's 100% PMI.
But when you believe in the movement and you believe in the power of owning your own home and other people owning their own home, and that generational wealth, was built through this winery, I think that it's a natural conversation that comes to you, and so you live it, you share it,
you love it,
and you
share
believe it. Yeah.
Going back to that land, I mean, it comes back to what you're saying is underneath everything, that generational wealth came from the land, right? If they hadn't had that land, if they hadn't had that vision for the winery, there would just be no way to unlock all this value. And you've spent your life really as a tasting manager, the manager of the tasting room. You spent a lot of time learning wine, studying wine. Have you worked for other wineries, and kind of what was the difference that you felt coming to work for this one versus other ones? I mean, they're all wineries, unless a few big ones are really small businesses, but there's the big ones in Napa Valley. But for the most part, they were probably a small business as well.
I think one thing that really attracted me to wanting to work for Casino Wine, because I had worked at another winery and pretty much my whole career has been in hospitality, was the story that we had to share. The story of Simone and the family and how it came to be a winery. And that story is really reflective of why Amador County, El Dorado County, Placer County, the only reason that there's fruit planted here was the gold rush.
Yeah.
So oldest vineyard arguably in California is just down the road here. The old Grand Prix vineyard was planted back in 1869.
Wow.
And the gold rush started gold was discovered in 1849 in Coloma.
Yep.
So
many a times I've taken the high school trip or the great elementary school trip there.
Yeah. So with that, I think Casino Mine Ranch has a reflective story in terms of they were looking for gold, and then they settled the land, and then the next generation planted grapes. And that's kind of similar to what happened. A lot of the Italian folks who came out here to mine for gold, they were the ones that planted Zinfandel, and that's why you see so much old vine Zinfandel up and down this area here. That's why it's the main variety.
Yes,
of Amador
it
County.
Absolutely is.
Yeah, and
right?
easily the Sierra foothills, which encompasses, I think it's between 7 counties up and down the Sierra foothills.
Wow. It's a great appellation for sure.
I mean,
We're really blessed to be here.
It's such a picture of planting fruit, right? Like you were planting fruit, and then your generations harvest that fruit. And I feel like
it takes years to develop that, right?
You think about Nordstrom's or these, bigger companies, and it started with somebody's idea that it eventually evolved. And you want to keep that hometown feel, and yet you also want to be able to grow that business so that it will continue for generations to come.
Justin, I'm going to ask you to pass me that white again. So tell me about this grape. It's a Grenache. What makes a Grenache different than like a Chardonnay?
So this is Grenache Blanc, and it is genetically, it's from the same family as Grenache, the red that we also do as well. But what happened through years, you have different families of Grenache. Grenache historically has been said to originate from Spain under the name Grenache. And during that time in Spain, there was a mutated version that was called Grenache Blanc. And the Basques brought it over the Pyrenees Mountains to the Rhone region of France, where it's one of the main varieties they use to produce white wines. So I would say in style, if someone was looking for something comparable to like a Chardonnay, has more mouthfeel, it's more creamy, I would pour them Grenache Blanc. But we do 3 different white wines here.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, 2 different rosés. But yeah, I love our Grenache.
Yeah, this is lovely. I really have enjoyed this.
It is very good too.
Yeah.
So Justin, we talked to Matt about the different wineries that he had been at. Have you only been at one brokerage? Or have you worked for different brokerages?
Yeah, so I started at Lion Real Estate, and they actually had a wonderful mentor program there. My first 4 transactions, I had someone in the shadows help me through it, because schooling gets you ready for the test.
Yes,
right. And that's kind of what I tell
absolutely.
everyone is,
like
you're going to learn a lot about water rights and how many square feet are in
an
acre
acre.
and all that stuff. But they're not going to tell you how to write a contract, how to build a business, and
how to build relationships, and how to connect with community.
That's where I went first off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you how to develop a relationship.
They're going to help you pass a test. And so Lion was great. I was there for just over 5 years. And then I bought my house in Placerville 2020. Most of my business had been El Dorado County. I was down in Folsom at that time. So I just started looking around in El Dorado County, and Remax Gold.
And Remax Gold has a great legacy. Lions has a great legacy here in the area. Remax Gold is probably one of I think they probably have 16 or 17 offices in the local area. So they're one of the largest branches. I was with Remax Gold many years ago. And then different companies, as I've come and gone, I think I've been with Remax, with Keller Williams, with my own brokerage, with Intero, with EXP, and back to my own brokerage a couple of times. And so what would you say the difference is between brokerages? Do you think really the brokerage has that much value that they're adding, or is it the people you're hanging out with?
So it's 100% who you surround yourself with.
Right.
So, and even, it's who you surround yourself with, absolutely. So I don't think that the brokerage is as important when you're with your friend. Like, I've got a great friend who's EXP. Another good friend is also Remax, but a different office. And they were the two that they were both at Line when I started there, and I followed them and did they were both successful. I did what they did and try to do what they do today.
That's been my story as well. I followed someone, and that person went from place to place. So I actually went from place to place and never really saw that big of a difference. Although I would say that where I'm at now currently, I do see a bit of a difference. And it's not so much a difference in the brokerage aspect as it's just the people that came to that brokerage all have this family feel, but it's a family feel multiplied by 86,000 agents. And so I never had that before. Even at Keller Williams, which was an excellent company, really enjoyed Keller Williams training and things like that. But the family feel didn't carry to every agent. It only carried to the ones that I was associated with, which were great. And everybody in my office tried to help me as much as they could, and it was a great family environment. But when I took it on a macro, when I went to another town, there was no connection, and then now in the company I'm with now, and everybody knows I'm with EXP, but the way they're set up, it's such a connection when you go to another city, and it's like, you don't know anybody, and the next thing you know, you're connected to somebody. And I just didn't get that feeling with other companies. Remax, our Keller Williams.
Brand recognition is important. So, Remax is a bigger company.
Yeah.
They're, Sacramento Kings. They got the little blimp that goes around. So I would say there's some help with seeing it and
maybe.
But I don't
know if I agree with that one.
I think the personal agent is the most important.
That's what it's been.
Your relationships, how you service.
The people
help and give,
because no one hires a brand.
They hire the
They
person.
hire you, Justin.
Absolutely.
They hire you, the agent.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
The most important.
Rachel,
is
they
who
hire
you.
you.
Yeah.
If they want to do luxury real estate, they don't hire me. I'm multifamily. They hire Rachel. Rachel is luxury real estate. So it definitely makes a difference. Same thing to do with you. If you want a high-end winery experience, this is different than what I could buy at Costco.
Yeah.
There's
sure.
a difference.
Very different.
Yeah. Touch base back to that connection to community. So you guys have been here for a very long time.
Both of you.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history there. Like How has that community connection connected and played a role in your vineyard here?
Well, what's been really interesting is meeting different people who've been in the community for a long time and who knew Simone. Last year we were at the last year we poured at the local the Plymouth Farmers Market. They have it from August to September, and it was the first year we've done it. And one of the women came up to our booth. We were pouring wine, and we had a picture of Simone there. And she picked it up, and she's an older woman, and she was like, she showed it to me. She's like, I knew her when I was a little girl.
Wow.
And one of the other gentlemen who came up, who was much older as well, he came up and tried our wines, and then he looked at the photo of Simone, and he said, this was my godmother.
Oh.
So just to kind of tie in,
Yeah.
the family, a lot of people, the name Plymouth comes from the early settlers who were from Virginia. They named the Shenandoah Valley in California was named after the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. They were the people who settled this land initially, came from Virginia and named it just like their home back in Virginia. So,
I've been to that valley as well,
Yeah.
and I wondered if there was any kind of connection between the two.
yeah, John Denver did not write about this one. He wrote about the one
That
over
one,
there.
yeah.
Although I wish he would rewrite it. But
Rewrite
we don't
it,
have
yeah.
a Shenandoah River.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
I just came from Boston and Philly and New York, the East Coast. I just came back from there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how old stuff is there. And over here, we never think about anything having that kind of age. But here we are with a story of Simone that does have that kind of age,
Yeah.
that really is able to go back and tell you that history. So
Yeah.
I think it's really lost in a lot of our California conversations. That are hundreds of years, there's just not a lot of stuff that is around here that's got that
Yeah.
kind of story with it.
Well, to what you guys do, your trade, a lot of, I think, with that stuff that interests me and my family is the history of Northern California, and it had to do a lot to do with the gold country. We were just in Placerville, and we had been there before, but it wasn't open. But we went to Gold Bug Mine, if you know what I'm talking about. And we, it's more for like kids. And
Yeah.
field
It
trips.
is. It's fun,
But
though.
I have
It's
4
fun.
kids, and we
Yeah.
took them, and it was the best time. But I think tying in some history is really important because it creates a
So
story.
important.
It creates a human connection. And,
Absolutely.
with wine as well too. When you're trying to create this experience, the place is beautiful, the wines are great, but also on top of that, hospitality and also being able to tell a profound story to tie in a connection so that you can create a connection with your guest or
Absolutely.
client
And it's
is
so important, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's so important to know our history. It's so important to be able to connect that and to know where our roots come from. Like, coming to this winery, I think that if we never had this conversation, there's so much to be missed out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm so glad for the opportunity to learn.
So legacy is, what we're talking about here. That's the idea of that it just keeps giving generation after generation, from your father flipping houses to,
Yeah.
doing those slow flips, and that gets you interested in real estate. And, I think that is a legacy that they've built and that you get to have in your mind. We do like to talk about real estate here, so we're kind of getting towards the end, so we'll make it quick. But I do want to ask, first house you owned, do you remember anything about it?
Oh, let's see. Well, first house I grew up in, man, I remember as a kid. Can I
Sure,
bring
anytime.
that story?
Absolutely.
So it was first house that I remember. I was actually talking about this. Like, when do you start having memories of your childhood?
Yeah.
And I remember it was moving day in Alhambra, Southern California. That's where I grew up. And my parents bought this part of it. They bought a duplex, and eventually my grandparents lived on the other side. It was like a 2-2 on each
Love
side
that.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, they bought a home. Can you imagine, in Southern California, $100,000?
Oh, yeah.
Close
Yeah.
to downtown LA. This
Yeah.
is back like in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Now it's worth way more. But
Yeah.
the house was a Spanish style home built in 1920, so now it's over 100 years old.
Wow.
And I always joke, my dad constantly working on a house. I'm like, you ever gonna stop? And I just remember he always had new
He
projects.
knew. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of my first memory
Yeah.
of living in a home and
Yeah.
how special it is, and bringing people back to it, and
Yeah.
parties
And that
yeah.
nostalgic, like, family feeling.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
that, like,
it's home.
when I talk to my son and my daughter, and they go back to my first home in Illinois, and so they talk about, like, just that comfort feeling of being
Yeah.
home. What about for you, Justin?
So I would bring up, but it was like 16 moves before I moved out, right? No. I grew up in a lot of different houses, but it was always fun to get to build the house. But anyways, so I'm in my first home. So I bought it 2020.
Congratulations.
There you go.
Still in it.
Yeah.
It was a rental which was I always intended to buy a house that needed work, of course. 'Cause,
Yeah.
You know, sweat equity.
It was a rental.
Absolutely.
It was a rental when I bought it.
when you
Right.
bought
So
it, yeah.
sorry. It just, you know,
Yeah.
it had been a rental. The
Yeah.
floors kind of needed replaced. A lot of updating to do, light
Yeah.
fixtures, that kind of stuff, electric, all the outlets, just a
It
lot
sounds
of work.
like a perfect home.
It was exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely,
The price
yeah.
was right.
And that. I mean, I always encourage. I mean, turnkey is wonderful and nice if you're in that place in your life.
Yeah.
But I also encourage, like my clients, I encourage them purchase the home that needs a little work, and maybe that might reduce some of the, you know.
Yeah, and you get to put your touch and feel to it. I mean, I think about
Yeah.
your house now.
Oh.
You've got a gorgeous house on the lake,
Yeah.
but it wasn't your touch and feel.
Yeah.
It was nice when you bought it,
Yeah.
but
it
now
was.
it's being made even nicer
Yeah.
to your chagrin.
Yeah.
To your frustration.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
recommend, and you would concur, don't live in the house while you flip it.
Yeah, I mean that's ideal. However, sometimes you
It's a
gotta
lot of
do.
fun.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you gotta do what you gotta do. But again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, you just have to. You have to just dive in, and you have to get your foot in the game, because if you wait, you're gonna lose out.
Right.
Well, guys, we really appreciate you joining us, and we are so blessed to be able to sit around with
Yes.
great friends, make new friends, and enjoy really good wine.
Very good wine.
Really
Yeah.
top drawer for sure. And we get to do this on a regular basis. So thank you, Rachel, for you really came up with this idea,
Yeah.
and thank you for allowing us to come and be here.
So Matt, how can we get a hold of you?
Matt.
Yes, Matt.
Oh, sorry, Matt.
Oh,
Now, how can we get a hold of you?
you guys can either, you know, if you find us on like Google and if you text the number, go
What's
straight
your
to my phone.
What's your website?
Our website is casinomineranch.com.
Okay.
That's CasinoMineRanch.com.
And we're open Thursday through Monday from 11 to 4:30. I suggest reservations on the weekends, mainly so you can sit in one of these beautiful spots
Absolutely.
here. Yeah, come and check us out.
And I hear there's cornhole that gets set up when
Cornhole, and yeah, so this space is reservation suggested, 21 and up, and then we have a space that we welcome families, and that's our Sycamore Garden.
Oh, I
And
love
definitely
it.
remember that was 11 to 4:30, so it's not going to be a place for an evening event unless it's by a reservation or an
Yeah,
event.
a special
Right.
event or something like that. Yeah.
Great place for special
And
events,
Justin,
so I
how
can't
can
imagine.
how can
for
we get?
me, Google Falco Real Estate or Justin Falco. I should pop up right there on the right. And yeah, email, phone number, all of it's
What's
right
your phone
there.
number?
209-598-7448.
And what area do you serve?
So I do predominantly El Dorado County, but I grew up in Amador. I go out there. I sold a house in Fairfield by request, not so much that I pushed it. But so I go all over, but for the most part, I try to be the area expert
Yeah.
and know the market well.
And as always, you can reach me at norcalsbest.com, 916-872-3769. And Barry, how can we get a hold of you?
You know what? Direct sell 916-225-7777. I work with investors to buy multifamily properties, and I also own a property management company, and you can find that at expertpropertymanagement.com. And thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate having you here. It means a lot that the feedback that we get from people with the questions that we should be asking and the things that you want to know. If you have a small business owner that would be a great fit for our show, we'd love to feature them and give us a shout out. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me.